is, can you define who the Gen Y people are?
That's a good starting point as any, right? Gen Y is anybody born after 1982 to 2002. So, you look a little shocked by that, right? It's true, look it up, it's in the book. Using social media, you can actually interact with your consumer. And that's a huge, huge component. I mean, traditionally marketing always has also been a dictation, not a dialogue. You never got anything back. It was a two-way channel. There's things like Yelp that you can go on and see what people are saying about you. And you know, if I'm working with them, I look immediately and say, what about these 3 things that people are talking about? Why aren't you fixing that? You know, and it's just, people are not using this technology to the best of their ability. Video game advertising is an interesting medium because, once again, the interactive level. One good example would be Jeep when they were releasing their Jeep Rubicon. They first released the game Trail of Life, and essentially what it was is you could test drive the new Rubicon through a mining trading course, you know, just romp around. And all you had to do to get the game, it was a free game. You just had to give them an email address. A small price to pay. Video games are expensive, so that was great. And you had to interact with their product. I mean, a TV ad, you just see it. You don't feel the acceleration. This was, you could feel the acceleration. I mean, you could storm around that, you know, jungle like Lindsay Lohan after happy hour. Nobody cares. I mean, by comparison, try pulling that at your local car dealership on a test drive. I think they'll be too impressed. So you can actually have people interacting with your product. And as a result, when they did release Rubicon, they made an offer to the email addresses that downloaded the game, and their sales were 300% higher than they were projecting. And for one-time small cost of developing a game. These are huge mediums and cheap, efficient alternatives to what we're using now. And the remarkable thing is how few companies are actually doing it.
Aiden came and he spoke at Mount Royal today, and he started talking about the Old Spice commercial guy. And can you just tell us the story that you told the students today?
Sounds relatively misleading, doesn't it? Just talking about that Old Spice guy. I just can't shut up about him. It's always on my mind. The commercial. What's it? Mustafa?
I'd say Mustafa.
Yes. Something like that, right? And the interesting thing is it actually won for the best commercial of the year. And some people are aware of that. What most people aren't aware of, though, is that Old Spice sales went down during the quarter that it was the most popular commercial. Yeah, it's crazy. It went down pretty substantially. And once again, because it was failing to resonate, to really motivate consumers these days, you have to have a dialogue, you have to show shared values, and you have to really connect with them. And that's what companies like that are failing to realize. It's not good enough just to get the message out there. What's my motivation? Do you share my values? Is there some reason? Are you associated with a good cause? Do I feel good about picking this business over that business? One of the interesting things was Conan Roper put out a study recently that said 9 out of 10 people, all things considered, everything the same, would switch brands to a company associated with a good cause. And how few companies put that at the forefront of their marketing portfolio.
Also another term called the snowflakes, because they're all, each and every one of them, unique. In your book, you talk about how to appeal to this aspect of how they honor the individualization, how they want to be treated as individuals.
Not buying the individual comment? Sensing a little resistance from this side of the room.
Snowflake is spoiled brat.
Oh, ooh, come on. There's always a heckler in the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. What can you do? Well, whether it's founded or not, whether we really are as unique as we would all like to believe we are, or it's a persistent self-delusion, the point is, we do feel that way. And it's been throughout our lifetime. And it's not just our fault, I would like to submit. I mean, what was one of the most popular toys in the 80s? Everybody remember?
Cabbage Patch.
Slinky.
There you go. She read the book. She had a cheat sheet. The Slinky. Did you say Slinky? That was up there too. Partial credit for that one. But the Cabbage Patch Dolls. The Cabbage Patch Dolls. What was the thing with the Cabbage Patch Dolls? What made them unique? Do you remember?
They all had a name and they were all like a little history.
They were all individualized, to coin the phrase, if you will.
They got them right.
Yeah.
To adopt them.
Was that the pound puppy? I think you were acquiring a bird in the state. Whatever it was, everyone was individualized, right? Now think about that. Throughout our life, everything was individualized. Everything we did, all the technology made things more accessible, more customizable. Now the interesting thing is how companies can use this. I mean, this is something that's very important to Gen Y, being able to show their individual nature. You know, if you look at anybody's cell phones, everybody has customized images on there. You know, nobody's like, customized image. Now let's go with that stock waterfall. That's pretty. People like to show their character. So if we can incorporate that into our model, you can successfully attract more people. People will gravitate towards something they feel is more personalized towards them. Albeit even sometimes through just an illusion. The illusion that you're somehow really involved in making this thing so special, still enough to really motivate lives. It's interesting with retro actually. Even for me, I have an iPod. I always get the fancy new one. But my favorite thing is I have an old LP record player, you know, and we have all the LPs and everything, and sit and listen to those with our friends over. We break out all the old records and play them. And I think the interesting thing that people need to realize is not that it's a more compelling technology. It squeaks every now and then. You have to get up every 5 minutes to switch the record over. It's a total pain. But what I like about it is it just feels classy. It feels classy. I like having people come over and see my record collection. I like what that says about me. And I think the interesting thing about that, once again, it goes back to that closeness that Gen Y had with their parents. The thing that's more important to their parents shared with them. I mean, more than any other generation, Gen Y is friends with their parents. So their parents' car they had when they were 17 now has this value. Look at the new Mustang. What does it look like? It looks like the Mustang from the 60s. That's not even that old. That was their parents' car. You know, and it still has a value. So many companies can use that to their advantage. You know, people buy like old, retro, vintage, thrift shop t-shirts, and we will pay more. We pay more for something that looks old and used. We will pay a premium for that, and yet so few companies are capitalizing on it.
I'm trying to embrace Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm just going to be honest on behalf of my company. I need to know, because we sell weddings and catering, how important is it to me, or to our company, to engage in the YouTube? How important is that for Generation Y to view things like that?
You know what I would say about that is there's no real disadvantage to engaging in it. It's always going to be advantageous to get another medium out there, especially when it's except the time put into understanding it. It's free. You're not spending per stamp cost. The problem for a lot of businesses, though, is you have to use it as its own medium. And you have to understand it as its own medium. If you're to get results with it, you can't use old methodologies and put them on there, and it's just not going to work. You have to really take time to understand, why do people watch a YouTube video? What makes them go to these online sources, you know, and then resonate with them so that they will want to share it with friends. This is great. Doing that, that's the tricky part. Getting things online is really not that hard. I mean, if the guy from Double Rainbow can figure it out, I mean, it's obviously not that hard to upload onto YouTube anymore, but doing it right, that is tricky. And luckily for everybody, there's a definitive guide on how to do it right. So, I mean, and the low price of $18.95. It's a no-brainer to me.
You mentioned about the friendship between Gen Y and their parents. I'm curious as to the reason for it. Are they a lot like Gen X, that they stay in their parents' home for a longer period of time and don't move away?
I do not live with my mother. Let's sit there and straight right now.
Do you see any reasons for the relationship developing like that?
I would say the reason that they live at home more now is it's more telling of economic times. It's not entirely feasible just to come out of school and be like, hey, I'm going to get my own place. Things are super expensive. So I think that's a huge factor in that a lot of people ignore. As far as them being close with their parents, there's been a lot of comparisons to like helicopter parents. You know, the parents were very involved in all the activities, what they were up to, you know, spending a lot more time with them than their parents' generation. So I think the closeness has to do with more with that than it's like free ride. More so than even a free lunch. It's just they've always been so involved in our lives. I mean, the whole baby on board campaigns and everything like that. There was such an emphasis put on parenting throughout the 80s. And that's where even the huge egos and all these things come from. It has to do with parents who are very much involved in most aspects of their children's lives. And what we're seeing these days is just an expansion and exacerbation of those early life principles. Now, looking around, I'm going to make a wild assumption here. I don't think there's a lot of CEOs in the crowd. I might be wrong. So for students, for people trying to get into marketing, this presents huge opportunities for you guys. Because companies do need to make this transition. And even if they're currently denying it, they're going to have to give up and start acknowledging that difference, and soon. And for you, you can come in and facilitate that difference. And that is far more valuable than anything else you can offer to most businesses at this point in time. If you can really start to learn and understand a lot of these principles, these are the things that companies do not understand. If you know how to write a press release, great. So does everybody else. It's not that hard. You know how to do market analysis and different things. There's a lot of people who can do those things. How do you differentiate yourself and make yourself a valuable commodity going forward? I was able to play on the Gen Y thing and write a book. You can play on the Gen Y thing and get a really good job. Use it to your advantage. Come to understand these principles and help companies. If you can do that, it makes you a linchpin. It makes you irreplaceable. That's actually an interesting point. Glad you brought that up. I think one of the things I don't mention in the book that in my work since then, I've noticed that the role of advertisers moving forward will not so much be producers. That's what it was in the past, frankly. I mean, if you boil it down to what it was producing content. But now, anyone can produce content. I'm producing a small video in the back of the room, and I can distribute that very easily. Producing content is no longer this huge, insurmountable task that you have to farm out to some other industry. Content can be produced, and more interesting content. The big marketing firms, no matter what they do, still usually can't compete with what some Yahoo just made up. People see 3,500 ads a day. Nobody's absorbing all 3,500. It's not even feasible. That tiny biomass of 3 pounds between our ears is just not capable of doing everything sponsors would want us to do. So, instead of trying to be the loudest screamer in a crowded room, people need to learn how to step out of that room into a smaller room to people who actually care about the message. Like, today I'm here peddling business books. And look at that, I'm at a business school. That's fantastic. If I came in here peddling golf balls, nobody would care. Nobody would have sat down. Nobody would have sat down to listen to me for half an hour. You have to pick your market, and technology is really giving us an opportunity to do so. But technology is not enough. We need to understand the mentality, the thought process, the psychology behind the purchasing. The things that marketing can be doing it's a crowded marketplace. It's busy. There's YouTube. There's all these different things. Advertisers can be the curator. In the art world, there's tons of art. And if you love art, you're not going to go see it all. There's just way too much. Where do you go? You go to the Guggenheim. You go to the Guggenheim because some curator went through and tastefully picked out things that would be interesting and relevant to each other. Now, if advertisers can start doing that, which, mind you, is virtually free, you can display a hub where people can come for information, things that will be relevant, that are already popular, playing on their popularity, for free, and get people to come and return, like I do to the Guggenheim all the time, because they know it's always going to be something interesting to them, and it's a source for that information. You'll have a huge, huge consumer draw, and you'll have people forwarding you on Facebook. See, and that's where understanding all these principles and really effectively using them does give you that advantage, now and definitely into the future.